Let's learn about Impressionism. The eye is a funny thing. When you see a TV up close, it looks just like a bunch of dots. But when you step back, it creates a crystal clear picture. The same process was developed by the artists known as the Impressionists. The Impressionists were a group of revolutionary artists from France in the late 1800s. Impressionist art is considered one of the most famous styles in all of history, and it is often referred to as an art movement. An art movement means that a group of artists had similar ideas as to what art should be and look like. The artists start to create a new form of art, something that hadn't really been done before. An art movement usually happens over a specific period of time, sometimes between just a few years and other times spanning decades. In the case of Impressionism, the movement started around the 1860s. Impressionism became one of the first major movements of what became modern art. Art before the Impressionists had been stuffy, academic, and realistic. There was a lot of emphasis on religious artworks and historical stories and figures. Before the Impressionists, it was the art of the past. Impressionists rebelled against this and did things differently. The French Academy of Fine Arts was a centuries-old institution that taught students conservative painting and sculpture methods, focusing on Greek sculpture and famous paintings by Leonardo da Vinci or Raphael in their curriculum. Students at the French Academy of Fine Arts were required to study the masters and create still lifes inside their art studios. The Paris Salon was the official art exhibit of the French Academy of Fine Arts in France. If you were an artist being exhibited at the Salon, you were considered one of the best and most relevant artists of the time, garnering prizes and commissions at the prestigious event. In the 8 weeks a year that the Salon exhibits were open, roughly 500,000 people would visit. Between 1748 and 1890, the Salon was considered the greatest annual art event in the Western world. But in April 1874, a group of artists defied the Paris Salon and set up their own exhibition called the Refused. This was a scandal at the time. Their art was considered the rejects of the Salon. The artists had a new vision of art and didn't believe it needed to be so perfect and academic. It needed to be fresh, and they felt that art should evolve and have movement. They believed artists shouldn't only focus on the past styles, but create something entirely new. Artists like Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Camille Pissarro, and Edgar Degas put together the first Impressionist exhibition. Their artworks were different. Their paintings were created with quick and loose brushstrokes that left more of an impression rather than the clear and precise artworks that came before them. They were also less interested in doing paintings that looked like photos and more interested in dots of pure color that, when seen at a distance like a TV, made an impression of an image. They used thin lines or dots of visible paint, using less time blending as artists before them had done. Instead of using black or gray paint to create shadows, Impressionists used varying levels of pure primary colors like greens, purples, and reds to get gradually darker and create shadows. It had not really been done like this before. So when painters first exhibited this style, critics did not like it. They said it looked sketchy and unfinished. However, it was so unique it started to be noticed by the major figures in art in France, which was the center of the art world at the time. Artists like Edouard Manet created a bridge between realism and Impressionism by subtly changing how colors were applied to realistic paintings, making them slightly less realistic but still recognizable. His painting Olympia created such a controversy in Paris that everyone was talking about it. This attracted a lot of young artists to the new style, and it began to evolve. Sculptors like Auguste Rodin did realistic work early in his career, but after being accused of faking a sculpture using body molds, he vowed to create exaggerations of figures. He used large hands and feet, strange poses, and broken body parts to create impressions of classical figures. Claude Monet became a student of how light worked and did dozens of studies of buildings at different times of day so he could show people how light affected the scene at any given moment. In fact, it was Claude Monet's painting from 1872 entitled Impression, Sunrise, that gave way to the term Impressionism. A very important aspect of the Impressionist art movement was that artists spent a lot of time painting outdoors in nature. This was known as plein air painting. Painting outdoors in plein air meant that light and clouds were always changing and moving. The artists focused on capturing the outdoors quickly, in a sketchy manner, and in a single sitting. They were interested in capturing the light that came from within. But Impressionist painters did not only paint trees and bridges, they also painted scenes from the cities, including Paris cafes and boulevards full of people. They didn't want everything to be fancy. They liked to show daily life scenes that many people experienced and could identify with. But one thing was common: their colorful paintings often showed movement in the brushwork. Another young and gifted Dutch painter was Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh created paintings with large globs of pure color in ways no one had seen before. Although he had many mental problems which affected him, he used these to see and depict the world with swirling masses of bold color and fantastic scenery. His painting Starry Night is one of the most iconic paintings in all of the world, and while Van Gogh was considered post-Impressionism, or after the Impressionist movement, his artwork became groundbreaking and revolutionary in the world of art. The Impressionist style continued to evolve as more and more artists became aware of how paint could be applied differently than their teachers had told them. This made many artists change their whole idea of what art could be, therefore becoming an art movement.
Comic Kids.